All right, well, welcome everyone to another Supercharged Sunday with me, your Supercharged host and business coach, Emily McHugh, and my wonderful guest today. I have the lovely Sharon Weber. Hello, Sharon. Welcome,
Hello, hello. How are you?
welcome. Yes, we're so happy to have you. And I think you're in New Jersey, right? You're coming to us from New Jersey.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent.
Montclair, New Jersey. Yes,
Montclair, New
yes,
Jersey. Excellent.
yes,
Wonderful.
yes.
So here we have with us the special needs advocate, and you'll soon know a little bit more about that as Sharon explains more of her background. But today, this is a very timely topic. Our topic is supercharge your self-care and 3 tips on how to stay centered and grounded. And especially in the times we're in, the more tips and insights we have on that, the better. Because we're in some turbulent times and staying grounded is very important and knowing how to do that. So we're really excited to have Sharon share those insights. So again, welcome Sharon. Yes.
Yes, thank you for having me. So, just a little bit about myself and my background. I started actually working in early intervention, and that is a service that is provided for children from 0 to 3. And so I provide services and go into the homes, and we would again provide floor time and assessments and plans, develop plans and implement plans for children age 0 to 3 that were having challenges with special needs. I also transitioned into working at Montclair State through the Children's Center. And when I first started working there, I was working, there was 2 separate divisions, which was children's center for children with that are typically developing and children with disabilities. And I was working with children in the center that had children with disabilities in it. And I was actually part of the whole process to develop an inclusive program. So it became the Children's Center. So, in other words, we had children typically developing and children with special needs blended into the same classroom. So I was a part of developing that whole program. So I dealt with children again in my first half of my life. And then I ended up actually having a child with a disability of my own. So at that point, I realized that it was just too much and overwhelming to deal with children that had disabilities and then come home and deal with my own child, like be able to be focused and deal with my own child. It was just too much. Like energetically, I was not able to have enough mental stamina to be able to do both. So I transitioned into working with families of children that had disabilities. And so I did that for a number of years. And then now I actually help families. I do, again, my own business is consulting and helping families of children with disabilities, whether it's helping handle handle in that home situation with being like locked down for a year and a half, how to facilitate that. And then how to facilitate going back, transitioning back into school. Also, I do IEP consultants as well. And I also, separately from that, I work with children who are in the foster care system as well.
Now, what is
So
IP?
there
Can you?
are a lot of,
I'm sorry. Can you just?
oh,
What is IP?
IEP, yes. IEPs is individual education plan. So what happens is when children are in special education, sometimes they require an individual education plan. So I help either implement that or try to facilitate that. I attend IEP meetings in support of the parents to help them advocate, and also to coach them to be empowered to advocate on their own. So in other words, my job is to ultimately, I like to have them be able to advocate for themselves eventually, right? So I give them the tools and show them how to advocate, but also give them strategies on how to advocate effectively, independently, eventually. So I'm basically working myself out of a job, right? But I really want to empower them, because typically when you have children with special needs, what happens is there are different types of advocacy depending on the age range. So in other words, you're always advocating, but you may be advocating for one thing with a younger child versus, a child that's, 10 versus a child that's like 15 and maybe transitioning out of the school system, transitioning into adulthood. So those look very different at those particular times.
Well, one thing that it's really a fascinating background, and to see the progression evolving with the needs in the community or with the different people, and also aligning with your interests and your skill sets, where you wanted to focus your energies. It's all about training, being an advocate or advocacy on different levels, and training others to be advocates for themselves ultimately. That's just
Ultimately,
summarizing.
yes. So ultimately, meaning I kind of go with them, walk hand in hand with them through the process. So I'm initially advocating, but obviously with them, in the team, because they are ultimately part of the team. And sometimes we forget that, whether we're advocating in relation to school supports and services, or we're advocating for services in reference to, there's a system in New Jersey called the New Jersey Children's System of Care. We're advocating in reference to services that may be needed. Right. So regardless of which advocacy hat I'm wearing, always the parent or guardian is part of that team. And sometimes we're often, because I'm a parent too, right? So we're often talked at and not to. And so, I'm there to kind of facilitate and have their voice be heard.
So let me ask you, Sharon, could you define for us what the special needs mean? So we at least know as a baseline, what does that encompass? A special
Okay,
needs.
so so special needs can be a variety of things, right? So it can mean, you just need some additional support and services to be able to help a child regulate, which we're going to get into that in a minute. But if a child is not regulated, meaning centered, grounded, then they're not ready to learn, right? Or they'll be they won't have you'll see challenges within the home because of something is lacking in regulation.
Yes. And that's a part of the supercharge process, might I add, Sharon. It's that you have to be prepared from one stage to the next to be ready for the next thing you're going to. So in order, you have a final destination you want to get to, an ultimate outcome you want to see, but there's certain foundational principles that need to be in place for that outcome to happen. So that's
right. So sometimes what happens is you won't even realize that there's something else underlying a certain behavior. So for a child, you might see a certain behavior and you might not realize the underlying is something is causing them to dysregulate. It's something else, whether it's a pain, whether it's a light or sensory issues, whether it's I don't feel good physically today. It could be anything, like any little thing that they might not be able to verbalize that causes the dysregulation that you're seeing, or what a lot of people call it is behaviors, but there's always something underlying beneath that. And so we want to get to that, the gut of that, in order to help them to be able to eventually regulate. So ultimately, as children and adults, so children learn typically how to regulate themselves, typically, right? Which with children that have challenges, the regulation is a challenge a lot of times. So it's a process to learn how to regulate and ground themselves and center themselves and balance themselves. So we have to ultimately provide strategies for that. And then ultimately what happens is then they begin to realize that, oh, this is what makes me feel better, or this is makes me feel grounded, or this makes me feel centered. So this is what I need. And they begin to request it on their own. So they begin to what we call is self-regulate.
So how do you get to, and then this process of discovery of these triggers or underlying issues, how do you actually discover the underlying issues when you really don't know what they are? How do you do that?
Well, first, what we do is we assess the child as a whole child. So you really have to know a lot about that particular child as a child first, not a child with a disability, but child-centered first, a child as whole. And and a lot of times what happens is I talk to the parents a lot in relation to what that child likes, what that child is, likes, the dislikes, the, some of the behaviors, some of, what they love to do, just that child as a whole.
Right.
Like what's their personality usually like,
Yeah.
So a lot of times I streamline that through the parent or guardian that actually knows the child. But really what I like to tell the caregivers or parents, if you really, sometimes it's difficult, but you really have to try to be in tune with your child and know your child as the child, as, them as a whole being,
right,
to be able to tap into these little things that I'm talking about.
Okay. So once you do that assessment, then what happens after that? Or do you normally discover the trigger things during the assessment period?
Well, sometimes, when I talk to the parents and we go through the assessment of, first of all, we typically talk about the triggers first, because that's what the need is. Like, so what is the need? What is the challenge that you're going through right now? And then we begin to talk about the child as a whole, right? So I automatically know what the behavior is, or the trigger is, or what they want to resolve first, going into the assessment. And then we get into the background of that child and what they're like, and their dislikes, their weaknesses, their strengths.
Right. So it's a process of a drilling down process, and you go step to step. Okay, very good.
Yes, and then we get to, once we get to, a lot of times there's this thing called, when we assess, we look at what happened right before, what happens right before the behavior, during the behavior, and what happens right after the behavior. Mm-hmm. Those are some of the stats that we look at in order to figure out kind of maybe the triggers that might be underlying in some of those behaviors.
So Sharon, what could be an example? And I know that different people are in different needs, different things, but what could be an example that people could relate to that would behavior that would someone could exhibit that's indicative of some other need that they have, and then how you resolve it, just as an example.
Well, okay, so I'll give you an example. Maybe I always give this example, like kind of a sensory issue. Sometimes we as adults, we get distracted, or light bothers us, certain light bothers us, or a certain noise bothers us, right? So and then, look, we try to avoid it, or we just work through it as adults because we have coping mechanisms that we already developed as adults.
Yeah.
But sometimes as children, they haven't developed that yet. So if they are distracted or bothered by a certain light or noise, they might, yell or scream or cry, or fall on the ground eventually if it's not taken away immediately, meaning if that's not rectified immediately. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the behaviors that you might see. But just first of all, just recognizing that, is the first step. Recognizing that it's the light, or recognizing that I say a lot of times, for example, in school, in a gym, they have certain types of lights that actually makes noise, but you can't hear it. Like, in other words, unless you really focus and listen, like close your eyes and listen. But a lot of times in a bigger gym, there's the light that kind of makes a like humming sound. And I don't know whether it's just the gym thing, the lights that they put in the gym. I'm not sure the reason behind that. But anyway, you can often hear like a humming sound. And for us, you can't really hear it. So you don't really know it's there, and it doesn't really bother us. Yes. But for someone or a child that might be in tune, more sensory driven, it's loud and it's irritating to them. So realizing that is the first step, right? So in other words, exposing them little by little to that noise that is distracting to them is helpful to be able to develop strategies to be able to help them. So in other words, not just bringing them into automatically a space like that and not preparing them, first of all, or not having something to help distract them, maybe something that they hold, or maybe something that they play with, or something distracting in reference to distracting them from the light. Right, exactly. Yeah. But that's a whole process. That's a whole that doesn't happen like overnight, or or like within like a day or anything like that. That's a whole kind of plan of action that I talk about, that we develop in relation to helping resolve those problems or be tolerant of some of those things.
So it's interesting how what you're saying, because as you speak, I'm thinking of parallels, and I've shared this with you before about the whole idea of thinking of how one thing relates to something else. So maybe in the context of special needs people, these are certain specific things, but for everybody else as well, we have similar things. As you say, we've developed certain coping mechanisms, but we could also be better at developing even better coping mechanisms for different issues that we deal with. So It's just people are at a different level of where they are in the process, but it's really the same strategy.
Right.
Kind of
deal. Yes, absolutely. So when I talk about regulation, for me, it's regulation. My work, a lot of my work is focused on the children. However, with parents too of children with special needs, and it relates to people in general, right?
Yeah.
When and in relation to regulation, when I talk about regulation, when I talk about being grounded, when I talk about being centered, when I talk about being balanced, because if you're not regulated, if you're not grounded, if you're not centered, if you're not balanced, a lot of times the negative is lack of focus, always on edge. It could lead to anxiety. It could lead to health issues. And, you just feel like sometimes, and it could lead to depression, honestly, right? So all of those things, and also when you're not regulated, you're not clear and able to move forward in the way that you should, regardless of what your focus may be. So in other words, if your focus, again, like your audience is mostly business women, right? Entrepreneurs. So if you're not regulated, and I mean regulation, and we'll get into like dimensions of wellness, just like kind of tap on that, in all aspects of your life, and be able to identify what you need to feel regulated, then it's hard to move forward with a lot of things, because you can't see clearly. It's almost like a screen. It's almost like a mask or a screen over you, where you can't really focus like you need to focus, and you can't see clearly to move forward.
Right, and that is in tune with the whole topic today, the supercharge your self-care. So under the umbrella of self-care, all of these techniques and points that you're highlighting is a part of the self-care process, because you have to be able
Yes.
to identify it, acknowledge it, recognize it, see the patterns, and know when it's time to do certain things for yourself.
Right.
Whether it is take a break from this, do this, whatever it is you need to change. And as you're going to go share these specific tips with us, that's what it means. So self-care is not just going to the spa. It's not just going and doing something like that, even though it could be that too.
Yes, that's good too.
But it's not just that. It could be just even
No.
stopping, turning off the lights. If the lights
Right.
might need less
Right.
light,
Right.
like that.
Right. I mean, yes, absolutely. So when you talk about feeling grounded, centered, balanced, also just being tapped in, like I said before, in relation to a child that has special needs, I often encourage families to be tapped into that child. You need to be tapped into your own self too. Like, in other words, tapped into when you're feeling tired, or when you're feeling overwhelmed, or when you need a break, like you said, or when you just, need to do something different,
Yeah.
or need to be eating something different, or feel a certain way. Just tapped into your body as a whole being to know what you need in order to supercharge yourself, in reference to being able to be present for your clients.
Absolutely.
So you need to be regulated in order to be present for your clients, whoever they may be,
Exactly.
right? Because if you're not regulated, then there's something you're going to miss, or an opportunity that you might miss, or, something that you might miss in reference to working with a client when you're not at your best. So all I would say is that part of being at your best is being regulated and taking care of yourself.
Okay, excellent. So let's dive into some of these tips. And I know number one is the regulation. You've mentioned that. So maybe if you could define it some, and let's go into the tips that you're sharing. Well, I shouldn't get
Okay.
ahead of your tip, but since we did give them a
No, it is regulation, but it's, like, again, it's, again, not forgetting, because a lot of times, especially when we're us as entrepreneurs, we're always working, we're always trying to get ahead, we're always thinking, like, what do we need to do next? And we're always thinking how to get more clients, right? We're always thinking how to get bigger, in relation to closing, right? Closing clients. So one of the tips is just to, in the mornings, help. That may look like meditation. That may look like a walk. That may look like, for, a lot of times on Mondays, you do a Monday, I call it a supercharger Monday, right? But
Momentum Monday, yes, but it
momentum Monday. But but yeah, I mean, look, because it's supercharging me on a Monday, right? So it helps me get into that mode of focus and what I should be doing. And it actually is encouragement to me, because a lot of times when you speak on, sometimes I remember one of the topics that you spoke on was getting out of your own way. Like, I mean, I don't know if that was like the the name of the topic, but it was basically getting out of your own way and being aware that you might be self-sabotaging yourself in a lot of ways. And to, that, that piece alone was extremely helpful to me, because it resonated and gave me what I needed in that moment. It was almost like you were speaking directly to me, even though you were speaking to a group, but you were speaking directly to me and really helped me to identify, and really, it was straight in my face. Like, you know what I mean? Like, attack it head on, right? It was allowing me and encouraged me to like attack that head on and to push forward. Because sometimes, as I was thinking before we got on, a lot of times, again, when we're entrepreneurs, we meaning the clients see the end result, right? They see what we have to bring to the table, but what they don't see is all the work and pushing and all the work that was put into it beforehand, and all this, maybe negative stuff that we had to do, or maybe stuff that didn't work and then we had to change, and then all the other stuff behind the other stuff that we had to like kind of work out.
Layers.
But ultimately, the layers, right? So, but it's ultimately bringing you to the next level of where you need to be in order to be successful. So again, it could look like your regulation could look like just, sitting on the porch or sitting outside, just kind of getting some fresh air and, drinking your coffee in the morning, just to be in a quiet space. I always like to encourage people to have a quiet space where they can go to just to recenter themselves, because that is greatly needed, whether it's inside or, you might even have to go outside for that, just to be. And that's why I say a walk is always good if you can. In Jersey now, it's nice weather right now. So you can always go for a walk, and just being one with, outside, like fresh air and, the trees and everything like that, helps you center yourself a lot. But it also can go into, again, meditation, whether some people look at positive affirmations, or they have positive affirmations that they often repeat or look at every day, that are on their walls, and they talk themselves, almost like you're talking yourself into positivity, right? Momentum, like you always say.
But Sharon, these things are, it's as you were saying, these are examples of different things people can do, and you can do any variety of them at any given time. But the whole concept is taking that time, making that space where you have a room. I like to call it like a buffer zone, a little buffer space where you can decompress. And whatever that looks like or needs to look like, make sure it's space for that decompression. Because the pressure builds up.
Absolutely. Right, absolutely. And even if it's, I say the morning, but just know, like, whether you're a morning person or an afternoon person, at some point in time, you need to take a break at some point you need to take a break and kind of like recenter. So I always try to I always encourage people to try to do it in the mornings, whether you even have to get up like 15 minutes earlier than you usually do, because I know some people have busier schedules than others, right? So even if it's getting up like 15 minutes and just centering yourself, because when we're not regulated, not only can't we help other people like we should be able to help them in any realm, we can't help our families the way we should be, in that, the way we need to help if we're not centered and regulated and balanced, because it's all about energy, and people feed off of your energy. So we want to be able to give that positive energy out, like, so they can automatically see that positivity in you as soon as they see you, as soon as they, as soon as if you have your child, get them up, because even you might not say anything, but people can still feel your energy.
Oh
And
yes,
so
it's
we
like a
want to bring that
vibration.
positive energy. It's a vibration that is unspoken. It's unspoken, but automatically when you go in like, think about when you go in a room, or when you go to an event, or when you go to, I mean, we haven't been at events in a long time, so you have to think about it before, like a year before. But like when we did go to events, or when we did go to parties or socials, you can automatically, without the person saying anything, feel their energy. You can feel, I mean, I can feel it because I do a lot of energy work, and I've done a lot of energy work. I can automatically feel a person's energy. So, I mean, but it's your energy stands out even if you don't say anything. And so, especially because you never know who you're talking to, who you're going to run into, who may be a potential client, or who may be a potential investor for you. So, you want to go in all areas, wherever you go into, with that positive energy.
Yes, yes.
So when we talk about like also regulation, we talk about like I do a training on dimensions of wellness. And so there's certain areas in your life that you should, a person, or I would encourage your audience to actually look into when they look into regulation in general, which is physical wellness, emotional wellness, intellectual wellness, spiritual wellness, social wellness, financial wellness, and occupational wellness. So all of those aspects of your life, you should really tap into. So again, I have this training that goes more into detail about those things. And then we put together a plan of action. So a wellness recovery action plan. And I do a whole training on that as well. So we go into dimensions of wellness. We go into each of those areas to define each of those areas. And then we put together individually. So we're doing it as a group, but you're doing it individually for you. Like in other words, we do it as a group training, but you're developing your own action plan, wellness recovery action plan, where, and everybody else is doing the same. But that actually is a great training, and it's really good to be able to identify each of those areas of your life. And you know what, sometimes, and we get into, my second tip, which is setting goals, right? But it's also about, identifying people in your life that are, I call it, and listen, this is all business, but I call it an asset or liability. So in other words, they're positive, and I don't mean an asset by like money asset. I mean, they're positive people in your life that help. I think people are in your life for sometimes for a certain season, and then sometimes we have to assess and sometimes bring other people in our lives and other people, not negatively, but like push other people, to the side, or like kind of distance yourself because they're not helping you grow as a person. And so if you don't feel like they're helping you in some way, whether it's motivating, whether it's, helping you with business, with business planning and development, with, with health, with all the dimensions that I spoke about, the physical, the emotional, intellectual, spiritual, social, financial, or occupational, in some way, if they're not a positive force in your life, then sometimes we have to make the hard choices.
But you know what? And the
Have,
thing about it is without any apology. And that's what I think our society, we're so kind of programmed or conditioned to feel that we always have to make an excuse for something, or we have to give a reason why we're changing. We don't have to give a reason, and we don't have to give an excuse. If a change needs to be made, make it.
Make it right. That's right. And you always say that. You just like do it. Just like do what you need to do. But a lot of times we,
we're thinking,
either feel like we don't want somebody to feel bad, or we talk ourselves out of it, or they're not so bad, but we know it's toxic at some point, right? Like, and sometimes it's hard because we have an attachment, right? Because they have been in our lives for a season, right? Or or 2 or 3 or 4, right?
But the thing, you can still, let's say you like a person, or even love a person, or care for a person, whatever the attachment is, but that doesn't mean that you have to take on, as you say, that negative energy, that negative thing that they come with. You say, well, I like you, but I don't like how you behave, so therefore we will have a distancing. But I still like you.
Right.
There.
Right. I still like you. Right. Over there. I still like you, but over there. I still love you, but over there. You're not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not. And sometimes, again, you say do it. Sometimes it's not. And I recognize that it's not, it's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. Right. Because you just can't say, I mean, if you really, really are into the person, regardless who they may be, like a friend of, whoever. And it might be, you know what? And ironically, it might be family too. You know what I mean? So that's really hard. But again, it's like, I love you at a distance, right? I know how to, I understand, and it's really all about understanding and being able to work with different people, right? And as entrepreneurs, we have to do that anyway, right? But we have to be able to identify what is not working for us, right? What is not working for us, right? Something is not working for us in relation to this relationship. And do I need to, can I just distance that person, or take a little bit of, you know what I mean? Like a little bit like of time, like in other words, I'll give you a little bit of this amount of time, and then I'm gone.
The boundaries and the perimeters.
Right. Or do I need to just totally, can I just, kind of transition you out of my life, because the season that you have been here for, you may have been positive in my life for a reason, and the season is just about done. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, there is toxicity, if that's a word. Toxic. In your life, you are causing me to be toxic and stay where where I can't stay anymore, right? I'm growing, you're not, right? Or I'm growing in, in a certain way, and you're hindering that in some way. Right. So we have to make those hard choices. Yeah. So the next tip I have is setting goals. So I would just say, for setting goals, it's everybody should set goals based on their priority. And it's priority means, like it's the same overlying definition, but priority may mean different things for different people. So just sitting down and assess. I know that when I initially, when Emily and I had a conversation about some of the, like what I really wanted to do or what was my real talent, because I had all these things and blah, blah, blah. And she was really good at one of the trainings that I did with you. You were really good at helping us identify and chisel down what was the priority, like what was the main thing that I wanted to do, what was my superpower, and that's the same with setting goals. So it's like, what is the priority for you? And that'll help you through the day or through the week in order to, set goals and write them down.
And
Write them
Sharon,
down and
yeah,
then check off as you
right.
go
It
ahead and
becomes
as
like
you
a
go. Yeah.
absolutely like a compass, if you will, because the whole
Right.
centering and grounding is you need to know which direction you're going, where you are, and where you're going. So when you have those
Right.
priorities, it's a guide to kind of keep you on track and feeding back into what you said earlier about focus, the things that can distract you. It's all about how do you get focused and stabilized and that centering and the grounding, and it's also scientifically proven, even though I can't tell you all the science, but I can tell you this, that the more contact we have with the earth, whether walking barefoot on the ground or touching the soil or whatever it is, it gives you energy. It gives you
Right.
like electromagnetic energy or what have you. So it's a part of that centering process, and it takes being stillness, because when your feet are firmly planted on the ground physically and metaphorically, you get the stabilization that you're looking for, as you say, going back to the regulation. So it's all feeding into each other very beautifully, the process.
Right. 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 So setting goals and actually trying to stick to them as much as possible.
Yeah.
Setting goals and setting deadlines for those goals.
Hmm.
So, in other words, not just setting goals, but setting deadlines for yourself.
Yes.
And then thing, the third tip is tapping into systems or support systems. Like, so in other words, it could be a community, it could be a support system, it could be people who are, again, those positive forces and accountability partners, tapping into some other system
Yeah.
to help you maintain the momentum that you always talk about,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's difficult to consistently do it alone. And, we always want to do it ourselves and, do everything alone. But I just want to say that you don't have to do it alone. And there are people out here, a lot of times we feel like sometimes either people are, we live in a world where, you know, it's not like it was years ago where, you know, we say it takes a village, right? But I want people to know that, the villages are still out there, right? The village, you just have to find them. You have to find the right person
Yeah.
to bring into your village. That's all,
Yeah.
but tap again, not feeling like you have to do everything alone. And in those setting goals, like going back to setting goals, like each of them are related to the next, because in setting goals, you might say, okay, I'm not good at this, right? So I need somebody that's going to help me do X, Y, and Z, because I'm just not, that's not my forte. I can't do everything. And so in tapping into systems and communities, you might find a partner or collaboration, right? And it's always nice to collaborate with,
Definitely.
again, the right people to be able to help you move forward.
For sure, for sure. It's a full circle process.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
That's very
So
motivating.
those again, to feel right, to again, those three tips: regulation, because you need to be regulated in order to move forward with anything. You have to be regulated, right? Setting goals, which is prioritize writing down your goals and setting deadlines. And the third one is systems, tapping into a system or community or a small, like it doesn't have to be a big community. It could be a small community. It could be a small system. It could be, 2 or 3 people that you may pull into, your life to help you with the momentum and moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what, Sharon, that's really lovely. I appreciate the summary. And if you were to say, just to kind of reiterate about the regulation, the whole idea is this ongoing awareness of what you need, when you need it, and what to do about it. So that's really regulation
Yes,
in a nutshell. It's not,
that's really regulation, and identifying when you're dysregulated and you need a break, right? So usually, when you're dysregulated as an adult, we don't. I mean, sometimes we do, because our when we're frustrated and when we're angry, sometimes that comes out in language, tone, body language.
yeah,
Sometimes that comes out in different ways. But you also, when you're dysregulated or frustrated or anxious, or you have anxiety, you feel your temperature changing. Like,
mm,
if you really are in tune with yourself, you feel your temperature changing, and you might not, like, in other words, it might not be visual to the other person.
yeah,
It's just, again, energetically with another person. But if you are in tune with your self, when you get dysregulated, your body temperature changes, and it's probably going up.
mm,
Like, your body temperature is going up.
yeah,
So
mm,
just being, again, in tune with how you feel, identifying it first, and then ultimately finding ways to do something about it immediately.
yeah,
Like, in
absolutely.
that moment, if you can, immediately, even if it's breathing. I mean, we teach our kids now in school to be able to breathe, right? Breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, right? Like, so just doing that, taking a breath, going somewhere, taking a 5-minute break, breathing, even self-talking yourself through, okay, I'm very upset right now, but I can't react X, Y, and Z, or let me get myself together. Let me take a break, get myself together, and come back. Even that is helpful.
And Sharon, it's extremely it's not only helpful, but it's powerful because it is a process you're training yourself to go through as opposed to just react and
Right,
and default to reaction, and however you feel, you want to yell, you scream, and then you don't really have a behavior all control. So that is, and that might be an extreme. Most people maybe won't do that, well, depending, but
right.
under other
Yeah.
conditions as well, where
Mhm.
wherever regulation is needed, that you're aware that something has to be done, whether it's how you keep your books or how you do your marketing or whatever it is, any mechanism that needs addressing, whether it's in business or your life, you have
Right.
approach to deal with it. So Sharon, share with us some more if you could, how people can work with you. I know you have an upcoming program you're working on and things like that. So tell us what's on top, what's coming up for you.
Well, yes. What's coming up is, I am doing I am involved in a project that is called, it's going to be called Indigo Kids Association, and it will be coming out live July 26th. And basically what it is it's a whole area that we have online, a whole area that we have dedicated to parents of children with special needs.
Dedicated
So
to
we're
children with
going to
special
have,
needs.
right, dedicated to that population, right? So we'll have a shop with discounted books, products, exclusive items, gift cards, Christmas Christmas picks for children with special needs. So that shop will be, one area. Then another area will be what we call pro services, which is attorneys and accountants, because a lot of times when you have special needs, children with special needs, you're not getting the tax break. There are extra tax breaks that you can get, and claiming, when you claim a lot of things that we actually put out, like financially, to support them, you might not be getting those benefits if you don't tap into the right attorney, accountant. When we talk about attorneys, also special needs trust, which is one of the other things that is important to tap into and to develop when you have a child with special needs. So that's the pro service. Under university and workshops, that's where we get into our trainings, webinars, seminars, masterclasses, and also we'll be doing entrepreneurial training, particularly to help people develop their talent to work from home. We'll have the live podcasts, events, YouTubes, Instagram, and Facebook Live streaming. We're also going to have a health component, which will be telemedicine and discounts on equipment and oxygen. We'll also have that support group that I was talking about, like the community with the support group that you can talk to each other, and be able to talk about successes, challenges, what's not going right, what is going right, and maybe tap into some other families that are maybe going through similar things. And we're also going to have travel as well. So we're going to have because it's difficult to travel with children with special needs, we have I want to call her I don't even want to say a travel agent. I want to say an associate, because it's an experience and not just a one and done, right? So you get the whole experience. So our travel associate will basically take you from beginning to end and make sure your travel experience is smooth.
Yeah.
When dealing with a child that has special needs, from the booking to the travel to the destination, making sure you get the right accommodations that are needed, to the tickets, to whatever else, to the excursions that you might want to do, such as, like, sometimes we go to aquariums, or we go to zoos, or we go
Right.
when we're out and about,
So
and when we travel. So
if
to
I
make
could
sure those accommodations.
put in a plug for Miss Sophia, if we could, directly
Yes.
there, because I know that you and her collaborate quite a bit, Sophia
Yes.
Muhammad, and in the advocacy space, and also, of course, her specialty with travel and accessible travel. And the beauty is to see you guys collaborate and really come work together with these creative ideas, bringing your different skills, specialties, and expertise to bear on a marketplace that is in definite need of these services and beyond. Because I would
Right.
say that people who want may not be aware of some of these things. Now that they may want to benefit from it from you. So
Right.
I think that there's a lot of opportunity. So it's an online platform, I take it, so people from anywhere can benefit from this, or
Absolutely, yes. And people from anywhere. I mean, we're located in New Jersey, but it's going to be from anywhere.
Right.
are going to be able to
So,
benefit from this.
how can people contact you if they're interested in enrolling or participating in the program or benefiting from the services you
So they can either reach, if they're interested right now in the workshops or trainings that are coming up, they can reach me at sweber with two B's, SWEBBER at redefining, REDIFINING, exceptional.com. And then for the Indigo kids, they can reach me at Sharon, SHARON, at ROURINDIGOKIDZ.com. And that's for the Indigo, that's for the whole association that's coming up.
So are they able to contact you at one for either? Because they might not.
Yes, they can contact. I'm just giving both, so but
Okay.
either one could be for either, because it's intertwining. So they're both kind of intertwining because that's my forte. I'll be doing the workshops, some of the workshops in the platform of Indigo Kids, and I'll be doing some. I also do, again, consultation and trainings for my clients under Redefining Exceptional, but again, they're overlapping, so it's one and the same.
Excellent, excellent. So this is really exciting, and I know you're developing. The website will be coming online soon. We'll share that once it's available, but in the meantime, they can reach out to you. But Sharon, I want to really thank you so much. All these tips and insights that you've shared. We've come to the top of our time. Time goes by when you're having fun.
I know, right?
It really does fly off.
It was great to be here. Thank you for having me. Yes. It was great to be here.
Thank you, Sharon. And I encourage people who are listening, if you have any questions, comments, please write it in. Like, share this post. Make sure to subscribe. This is going to be also on YouTube, on Facebook, so people really can engage with us and engage with Sharon and learn more about the wonderful works that she's doing. And just to remind you, if you have not signed up for your Supercharged weekly newsletter, please do so. Visit superchargedwithemily.com/free gift, and you get a download, and you also get some tips on supercharging every day, and in tune with what Sharon shared with us as well about certain things you want to think about on a daily basis, and also get on the newsletter. And we're here every Sunday with Supercharged Sunday, and of course Momentum Monday. So I invite you to join me. Follow me on Instagram at Emily the Entrepreneur. Sharon, do you have an IG handle? I forgot to ask you if you did.
Not yet, but I will have it soon. So
you will have it soon. You stay tuned, guys, because I'll be doing a blog post on today's talk, and as information rolls out, as Sharon is developing them, I will share it. I'll be glad to share it so you all can keep in touch with her and be aware of the amazing things she's doing and benefit from it as well. So with that, I'm going to say you guys have a wonderful week. And of course, as always, stay supercharged. Woo! Thank you all so much. And thanks again, Sharon.
Okay. Thank you.